Shelley an apology. So Shelley pointed out that there was an awful lot of information to try and cover in this meeting. And so Shelley very wisely was like, there's no way they're going to cover it in 90 minutes. So she made this a 3-hour meeting. I am religiously opposed to 3-hour meetings. There's no way that a meeting can be that effective for this kind of topic. So I am taking the kind of executive prerogative to say we are going to end at 1:30 the way we typically do. So that's just blanket, here's what we're going to do. So with that, I want people to take a quick look at this agenda. And if there is any item on the agenda that you think absolutely positively has to be covered, go ahead and call that out so we can make sure that we have time in this 90 minutes to get that done. So I'll give you a chance to kind of look through the agenda. Otherwise, what I'm going to be stopping is kind of cutting off or things like the updates as needed, because those are things that we could easily do via email if needed. So any recommendations for the agenda before we start?
You mean commenting on what's on the agenda?
Correct.
Well, I as best as I could tell, that steep slope issue on 16th and a half Street is time sensitive.
Yeah.
Right, Michelle?
Yes, and that's actually what we have listed to discuss first to make sure we do address it.
And it seems that there should be some mention of the climate action plan, at least a mention. I'm not sure what.
Okay, got it.
And I'd like to get David's update on Barnhart's Dam before he leaves.
Perfect.
Do we need to say anything about the city trash proposal? Because it does tie in with what the EAC is all about.
So both the climate action plan and that exclusive waste collection topics are under old business.
Okay.
Thank you, Marsha. But that's exactly what we need to be doing right now. It's just making sure we're going to make the most effective use of this now 84 minutes. Cool. All right, then I'm going to go ahead and jump in to the public comment period. Shelley, what's the status of any public comment for this meeting?
We have not received any.
Woohoo! So now we are almost back on time. So I will open up the opportunity for folks to provide any comments on the meeting minutes that Shelley circulated from the last meeting. Any edits, tweaks needed to the meeting minutes? All right, so Kathy, right now we're just looking at meeting minutes. So I will entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes from May 26th.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
And was that Kathy making the second?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So with that, we're going to jump into the 3 critical items right up front. One is the steep slope. The next is the invasive plants, and then Barnhart Dam. So key question, who's leading the steep slope conversation?
Well, not to be a Robert's Rules geek, but all in favor of the meeting minutes.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you, Ann. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Thank you, Ann. I love it. You can be the sergeant at arms. Thank you. Who's leading our steep slope conversation?
Do you want an overview from Adam first? Of what
I
the
think that works.
specific
And
issues?
so one
That'd be
quick
helpful.
one. So that's real quick where we are in the agenda. That's my failing that we didn't have someone assigned to have that conversation. In an email earlier, I had kind of thrown it out there that one of the lawyers might want to take a look and never followed up to see if that was possible. But Adam, if you can give us a quick overview of that steep slope issue.
Absolutely. I'm going to share my screen here so that you can have a view of the recent rendition of the site plan. So let's see here. So for those of you who don't know, this property is located, where is this? Go ahead, share. At the intersection of, or on 615 South 16th Street, backing up against the hill. And in this case, there are two parcels. The front parcel here, which I'm trying to highlight, is located in the steep slope overlay. And they are proposing a new garage area and a second floor addition here. This part of the project and proposal is not why we're here today. That part is this rear section. Right between these two parcels, and they are two separate parcels, this is located in a residential steep slope overlay district. This here is located in the preservation district. And that's why we're going to need everybody's help. This is coming before ZHB in July. I'm not exactly sure of the date. Dave is getting me that information for us. We'll get that disseminated as soon as we get it. But what they are proposing here is a generic sports court, some sort of either concrete or macadam surface here that is going to be used by the residents here, but also the church and congregants of the Fairview Mennonite Church, which is located within 2 blocks. Our concern is, of course, that this is preservation. It's not an allowable use under that zoning district. The city is allowed to put in a public playground, but not for the public. And we also think that with all the earth movement and digging that's going to go in, we're obviously looking at a massive impact here on what the overall meaning of the preservation district was. And that is to preserve the steep slopes, to preserve these areas, any further erosion, stormwater control, and interference by people. So they are going to be going before zoning hearing to get an allowance, to get an exemption to put this property in. Obviously, staff, as of this point, is against it, and we're building a coalition to show up and render support for preservation so that we're not seeing yet another area disturbed and, you know, causing impact across the area. What we also have here on South 16th Street is if they're putting in the sports court, we're also going to be having lighting and fencing, which is a further impact to the area. But then we also have housing across the street here, where obviously they're not going to want to see lights, even though we're going to be doing photometric plans. This is going to be an impact on their quiet enjoyment of why, you know, they're in that area as well. So that is kind of an overview of what we're up against right now. After it's done with ZHB, it will most likely come before Planning Commission, so we'll probably get a second shot of this as well. But we'd really like to see some vocal support for this in the first round so that, you know, we can, I don't want to say end it, because we like to see development, but we like to see sustainable and proper development in this case. And the applicants have been told that they're facing, no pun intended, an uphill battle. But that's what we're looking at here. So if you have any questions, I will try to answer them. We were hopefully going to have zoning on today since they were going to be the first round, but I can hopefully give an adequate answer. If not, we can follow up with emails.
Okay, very cool. So I saw a couple of hands go up real fast. So I saw Shelley, then Marsha, then Bill, then Ann. So Shelley, Marsha, Bill, then Ann. Shelley?
So Adam, on your draft, excuse me, the sirens. On your draft Planning Commission agenda for June 16th, you had this listed as a conditional use. So those will come before City Council and not the zoning hearing board. So could you clarify that?
No. The conditional use that's being heard tonight is 905 North 9th Street.
No, this was your June, you sent me it by email. It was June 16th draft agenda. You have open discussion at the discretion of the board and you list this address as a conditional use.
Yes, no. Oh, that's not a conditional use as of this point. I'm
Okay.
sorry, that's probably a mistake. And open discussion was advising the board members that this is going to be coming up and putting it on their radar.
So this is not a conditional use?
This is, as of this point, this is, I don't believe it's a conditional use.
No,
Very
okay.
cool. Thank you, Shelley. So Marsha, Bill, then Ann. Marsha?
Okay, because this is a block away from my home, I'm very familiar with all the individuals involved in this project, and especially want to take into consideration both the environmental impact and what they desire to do. And I'm trying to look at a win-win situation. I understand the concern about the environment and impinging on that. I also know that a block away is a playground that's owned by the city that is virtually neglected and unused. And I'm wondering whether there can be a discussion through the Rec Commission and through the folks from Fairview Christian School about why they might want to be able to use that land and why we might not be able to work with them to be able to use the areas on Neversink Playground as far as what their desired use might be, rather than having to have a confrontational hearing, because I understand they've always been about improving the neighborhood. And they do have a large number of youth that need to have play space. So I understand what they're trying to look for. I don't know how that process would happen, but that's sort of the direction I'd like to see this go. Rather than paving other areas, use areas that already have been paved, which are actually in a steep slope zone anyhow. It just happened decades ago that it was paved over.
Thank you, Marsha. So Adam, did you want to respond to that, or should we go to Bill and then Ann?
I'll respond to that now. That is a option that has been brought up. The Fairview Mennonite Church is taking that under advisement. That will be another option that we will strongly advise that they explore. But as of this point, we have not heard anything back from them regarding that option.
And just the reason why I bring that up is that one of the gentlemen that's involved did approach me about wanting to work with the city to basically, he didn't use the word take over, but assume responsibility for a Neversink Playground.
Okay.
So he might already, that's Lewis, he might already be thinking about that option.
Thank you, Marsha. So let's go to Bill and then Ann, and then I've got a question. So Bill, Ann, then me.
I like Marsha's proposal. I drove up to look at the property. The area where they want to put that play pad or whatever is kind of a plateau, right, Adam? I mean, it looks to me like that's where they want to put it, in an area that's. So on the one hand, from an environmental standpoint, you're gonna increase the impervious area, but it's sort of the block is developed on the other side with the houses. But my reaction is more as a former planning commission member. I think that putting what it essentially is a public playground or play area across from, there are like 3 or 4 row homes across the street. I think that's really it's myopic from the standpoint of the proposal. And I just, and I know that the church and their members are, you know, they're part of the stability of that part of the city. And I know some of those folks, but I just.
Thank you, Bill.
It seems like the inappropriate spot for that. And for me, less so from the environmental standpoint than just the contextual standpoint that it's a residential block, even though that's the end of the residential block. But
Thank you, Bill. Ann?
Yeah, so I have a question quick from after Bill's comment. Why is it a non-contextual spot for that? Why is that a bad spot for that? With row houses across the street and them wanting to open it to them, or are they not? Am I misunderstanding?
Oh, it's not going to be public. It's going to be private.
Okay. I get it now.
If it were public and the city were putting this in, that is, we have that right by use as the city to put in a public playground.
Okay, so that answers that question. And from a water quality and water runoff standpoint, my next question is, I didn't see the site, and I took a screenshot so I could enlarge the drawing, but I still can't see what the vegetation is, the existing vegetation, and I can't see their calcs. So for the runoff values, like that's one of my big concerns, and what the vegetation is on that site, and secondly, what they're utilizing as the cover for the play areas. If it's pervious, then that would be a different thing.
I don't
And
know if I could try and bring this up on my screen, but they've already taken some trees down. I'm not sure if that was a no-no.
So, okay, so I see a wood line, so they would be taking trees down, which has a huge impact on both runoff and climate and everything. So that is an issue, taking
Very
the trees
cool.
down.
Thank you, Ann. So I guess real quick, my question to Adam, and Kathy, I see your hand going up. My question to Adam is, what are you seeking from EAC at this point?
We'd be looking at a either a letter of support or a letter against on environmental reasons that this plan is or is not viable, and maybe some solutions that they should be looking at to make it a viable project.
And then related question, and Shelley, I guess it kind of, I'm looking to you to help me with this. Traditionally, is the role of EAC to only look at the environmental aspects and leave the broader political discussion to City Council? Or is it the role of the EAC to try and balance the environmental stuff against any potential citizen benefit?
Up to this point, it's been mostly the environmental and leaving the rest to others. But if this is a special exception, there will be no hearing before City Council. This will go to the Zoning Hearing Board and the Planning Commission, and those groups will give it their approval or denial. It will not be seen by council. So if that's a consideration, so you understand the process.
Thank you. Kathy, I saw your hand.
Yeah, the mailman came. Ooh.
And so David's now barking at the door?
Yes, he does that. I don't know why. Okay, so I do have concerns about the environmental matters that Ann raised. It contributes to stormwater. That's the reason for the slope, leaving slopes alone. It's also already vegetated. You can't substitute for that. And whenever we look at something like this, I mean, in response to Scott's issue about is it just environmental or do we balance, part of an environmental assessment is what are the alternatives. So we always are looking at what are the alternatives to something. Once we determine that there are adverse impacts, we look to see what the alternatives are. So there's always a political balancing in a sense. So when we have an alternative that is this use, already creating those environmental adverse effects that we can live with and have been living with, and that's why we have stormwater problems and erosion, but it's already there. That's a really good reason to not be for a use that is not approved in a preservation area. There is an alternative available close by, and I really second Marsha's thought that let's help clear a path. Just sort of say no firmly that there are lots of environmental reasons not to encroach further on a preservation area, not to encroach on a slope overlay, not to cause additional loss of tree cover and vegetation that's established for both water quality reasons and for erosion reasons. But then to, after saying, no, we think it does have adverse effects, there are some alternatives for people to consider.
Very good. Thank you, Kathy. So,
and I'd like to expand.
Hang on. I'm keeping an eye on our time. So The question is, do we want to continue the conversation? Because what I'm hearing is remarkable consensus. And so what I want to do is just test for consensus real quick. So I see your hand, Bill, but what I want to do is test for consensus. Is there anybody here on the call who is suggesting that we support the application? So is anyone from an environmental perspective suggesting that we support the application? Bill, was your hand up earlier because you were supporting it?
No, I was just scratching my face. I do have a comment. I don't know if we're about to vote.
Hang on, Bill. I'm keeping an eye on the time. If we're all in agreement, we don't need to keep talking about it. Bill Murray. And Bill Murray, you're on mute, so we can't hear what you were saying.
Okay, so just so the group's aware of it, 17th and a half Street, 1 block away, there's a tank up there, a raw storage tank built into the hill there. We are awaiting a grant from the state to replace that tank. When we replace that tank, there's a piece of property next door that the plot of land that we have right now will not allow us to build one in place while we'd have to take it down, and it would create a lot of operational issues. So we're anticipating working with the landowner to be able to build half of it on his lot. When the job's done, the old tank will be completely removed, and then we'll reforest the area for that. So I think it's important that we all understand that, you know, the preservation of that land is something that we have been talking about for 2 years. We've been working on that project. That's another consideration to support Adams. You know, I believe we should tell them that we want to preserve that land up there.
Very cool. So what I'm hearing still is a lot of consensus. And so what I would be open to at this point is a proposal that the EAC write a letter supporting Adams' position, meaning supporting the position that we recommend against the court. Anyone want to make such a motion?
So moved.
Any seconds?
Second.
Any discussion?
Just a question.
Yeah.
Marsha?
Is it my understanding, does Burke's Nature own that land or do they own it?
This parcel here, they own.
Oh, okay. So that wasn't included in the preserve when Burke's Nature brought the rest of the mountain. Okay.
Right.
Very cool.
The
Any further
other comment?
discussion?
Yeah. I don't think the letter should say we're supporting Adams' position. It should say that, right, you know what I mean? We got to be real clear that EAC does not support anything that takes more land away from the existing area.
Thank you, Bill. You didn't feel it, but I felt both Kathy Meyer and David Bean, the lawyers, kick me under the table. So.
Okay, I felt it too.
Very good. So,
yeah. Sure
Yeah, so who would write the letter?
So let's go step meal through it. So all in favor of writing a letter?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so now we need a volunteer or volunteers to write the letter, to Ann's point.
Can I ask a clarification question?
After we voted?
Yeah, it'll be about the content of the letter.
Okay. Go for it.
Now, it's going to address this proposal specifically, right? It's not, the letter will not say that we're going on record as opposition to any form of development of that parcel. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
I would be happy to add the bullet points about stormwater management to the letter.
Okay, I'll take a stab at making a first draft of the letter. And I'll try and do it quicker than I did the last one.
No, thank you, Kat. I know we're all volunteers, so this is like enormous amounts of work.
I have a lot. I do have open time in the coming 2 weeks. I've finally
Okay.
gotten my office cleared out at Alvernia, and lot of things happened that I didn't know were going to happen the last 2 weeks, but now it's pretty open. So I
Yeah,
can do
thank
it.
you. So Kathy, when can you have the letter, the initial draft prepared?
Why don't you give me a week?
Adam, is that going to work with your timeline?
Oh, absolutely, yes. We can get
Okay,
that.
so a week from today, which is 6:30, Kathy will have a draft letter.
Yes.
Kathy, when I see the draft letter, and obviously through Shelley, I'll circulate it to the EAC just to see if anyone has any concerns.
Okay, and I'll send it, let me send it to Ann a few days before that. So I'll try to get it done in the next 3 or 4 days. So there's time for Ann to add stormwater and water quality concerns.
Woohoo!
And-
All right, so we have a decision. We have a plan. We have someone who's in charge and we have a deadline. Next item on the agenda. Poor
Government work.
Kathy. We're back to weeds now. So Kathy, do you want to give us the quick update? I know I've at least read what you shared. Why don't you just kind of
Yeah,
walk
well,
us through the highlights of what we need to discuss in this meeting?
Okay, so I did not do what I was originally assigned because I, for one, was laboring under a misunderstanding of what the context was and what the city needed to do. And Shelley had taken a stab at it. When I finally read all of the materials, I had concerns that perhaps what we started out to do was not really necessary. And maybe we needed to have a different discussion before I drafted anything. So this was, and Shelley, maybe you could give us the background. Someone reached out to you or you received a communication that the city and other municipalities were being asked to adopt ordinances to implement the 2017 Act, which is the Noxious and Controlled and Noxious Weed Act, right?
Yeah, this came through the city's arborist, Lester, because it's an issue on the mountains. And so he was unclear how to address it because we didn't have anything. So that's where I
Right.
started.
Right. So when you read the act, and I hadn't focused on I think what really elicited this, and that is that the act was adopted in 2017, and it established a state program for the Department of Agriculture to have some procedures in place, clear procedures, clear enforcement, clear communication, clear authorities, a board to further develop the existing noxious plant list, all of the things you would need for a noxious plant program to actually work. So it was the state creating that. And then the state tucked in the provision about issuing control orders that the state would do, that municipalities will help. That municipalities, that if the state orders someone to eradicate a listed noxious weed or to do other treatment to prevent its propagation, distribution, its either sale or movement to increase its area of influence and area of destruction, that the municipality will go and do the control that the state has ordered. And the municipality can then go against the person who was supposed to do it and get their money back from if they instituted an action. I'm surprised the municipalities did not rise up in arms and get this stopped before it happened in the first place, because I think it's an extraordinarily, people complain about unfunded mandates all the time. This one is really pretty egregious in my personal view. So what it says is, and I put in my little memo that those two sections that are the provision, and it basically says that
So we give her the 15-second Zoom courtesy before we move on. and she would love to know her face right now, right?
Mhm.
Never glitches when people are smiling. I don't know how Zoom does that. Very good. So I'm going to give her a second to kind of unglitch. Shelley, please make sure I'm accurately capturing this, but we did receive an email from Andrew, who's a member of the EAC. And as I understood his stated position, he was not in favor of any additional laws or rules around this particular topic. Is that fair?
Yes, yeah, that's pretty consistent statement for Andrew overall.
Okay, very good. So we've lost Kathy. I'm going to actually move us ahead in the agenda real quick to Bernhardt's Dam. So David Bean, we're kind of looking to you. When Kathy jumps back in with apologies, we're just going to push pause on her and continue the Bernhardt Dam conversation. David?
That's fine. And the Bernhardt Dam conversation really doesn't need to be very long because not a lot has changed since my last report in May. So obviously, Exide has filed for bankruptcy, and their objective is actually to get out of the North American market altogether and to sell all of their assets and to move operations to East Asia, I believe, for the most part. The bankruptcy filing does seek to discharge all of their liabilities with respect to environmental issues, which is not uncommon. They tried to do that twice before. This is their third bankruptcy. And in each of those prior two bankruptcies, the Department of Justice, working cooperatively with US EPA, intervened, objected, and the final order that was issued by the bankruptcy court obligated Exide to continue addressing those environmental liabilities that were the subject of EPA's unilateral order. So they're attempting to do the same thing this time with a different outcome because they'll no longer be around. But I've talked to Kai Dow, who is the EPA coordinator for Region 3 down in Philadelphia. Had a lengthy conversation with him. They once again are working cooperatively with DOJ. DOJ has submitted a formal objection to any discharge of environmental liabilities. And I think it's everybody's expectation, including, quite frankly, the lawyers for Exide that I've talked to. I think it's their expectation that the way this is all going to kind of play out is that the bankruptcy court is going to mandate that Exide set aside certain monies in perpetuity to continue addressing these environmental liabilities. I got a call from Fred Latchett from the city solicitor's office a couple weeks ago. Fred simply wanted an update on what's going on. He's not familiar with this area of the law, so we spent a lot of time just kind of talking about historically what has happened to Bernhardt, what was put in place, and what the need might be in the future if the dam is breached and Exide is now required to come back in to do some further site characterization with respect to the island, which would now be accessible to pedestrian traffic. He now understands what the risk is for the city. And again, I think it's everybody's expectation that Exide is going to continue to be responsible for that going forward. We just need to work through this bankruptcy process. This is going to be an expedited bankruptcy. I think everybody expects decisions by this fall. But for the time being, we continue to simply sit tight. There's really nothing the city needs to do to lodge any type of formal objection because DOJ and EPA are taking the laboring oar and doing that on our behalf. So I'm monitoring things. Fred is monitoring things as well, and we will continue to keep everyone posted.
Very good. Thank you, David. And Bill Murray, I think you were the one that wanted to make sure David had the opportunity to talk today. Is that my memory correct?
Yes, and I'm aware of what he's talking about. And I was just wondering, is there any impact on what was going to be done as far as the decommissioning the dam and letting water out? Or are you saying that the city and all the work that we should just be in a holding pattern? Because I do believe, David, that I was involved with this because of the Rawa connection there, that it's way behind what was coming down from the state to get that dam broken down.
Yeah, so I mean, at this perspective, there's really no obligation on us I mean, the dam hasn't been breached yet. So, that obligation technically hasn't even kicked in. Yeah, the interesting thing that Kai told me at EPA was, he said, even if Exide goes away and is no longer financially responsible for this, it's our position at EPA that, we're going to come in and we'll take care of the additional assessment work that needs to happen. So I think ultimately the city is protected here. I mean, EPA then would look to perhaps an Exide successor to get reimbursed for monies that they might have to spend for a supplemental characterization. But really, Bill, until that dam is breached, I mean, Exide really isn't even committed to come in and do anything. So we're really in a holding pattern until DEP and the city figure out what the next step is with respect to the dam breach.
Well, I think they've already told them that, Dave. They want that thing taken down and the water gone. That's old. That's been like, they're like a year and a half behind now or something like that in getting that accomplished. That was a mandate. That was a directive. We worked on that last spring, trying to come up with an alternative way to lower the lake. Shelley, maybe you can update us.
Yeah, the specific directive was from DEP to us to lower the level. And unfortunately, the valves to do so no longer operate. And so the only way to lower the level for them to inspect the dam itself was for us to remove portions of it to allow it to drain out. And that was supposed to have occurred by December of 19, I'm thinking.
I think so.
Yeah. And Dave, for environmental purposes, I'm bringing it up because I was out there with the engineers and environmental folks, and there was a lengthy discussion about where the potential contamination actually exists. Is it in the ponded lake portion, or is it already into the stream? And when you breach that, you're going to wash it. You're actually going to push the contamination even further downstream. So there was a lot of heavy duty discussions about that. And I know the city, it's just sitting there right now. Marsha, I see that.
Yeah, just to be able to say, we did not have, with the level of contamination, it was more on the steep slopes that were surrounding than the actual drainage. But my concern is once you drain it, that's when you're going to discover what's actually at the bottom. So I really think we need to revisit that report. I know Public Works has it as far as the actual level of contamination. And that might be on upcoming meeting agenda, just to be looking at that report.
So, I mean, Exide did actually extensively sample the lake bed. And my understanding is that there are not any site-specific exceedances of lead in the bed of the lake. The concern is with that island, what is currently above water, which was not remediated before at all, which might now be accessible to the public using the park. And that's where additional remediation might have to occur. I think Exide will be obligated to resample those portions of the lake bed that might now be exposed as a result of a further lowering of the lake bed, but the expectation is that they're really not going to find anything there that's going to require any further remediation.
Very cool. So
I have a question.
So, okay, Ann.
Real quick question. Yeah, so are they going to assess the lake bed prior to the drainage? Is my first question. And my second question is invasive species of fish were found in that lake, and is that going to populate downstream?
And I don't have an answer to either of those questions. I would be surprised if they sampled the lake bed before the dam was breached. I think that's going to be part of a negotiated resampling that will occur at some point in the future.
So, and that would be the epitome of the water being out of the dam at that point.
And that was looked at intensely. I think with the changes in Public Works right now, it'd probably be nice to give the two people that are running it now a chance to really review it and then maybe, decide what the immediate plan is, because I can tell you there was a lot of work put in trying to find it. And invasive species was looked at dramatically, and you don't want to hear how they handle that.
Very good. So let's pause real fast. So Kathy, I'll let you jump in here with the last word on this topic, and then Kathy, I'm going to circle us back to the invasive plants. So Kathy, on this topic of the dam.
Okay, I just wanted to correct that I am quite sure that any plan to breach or partially breach the dam will include concerns about what sediment would be released, and it would likely have to be sampled unless the dynamics of it and the physics of it are that sediment would not be released by whatever changes they'd be making to the dam to lower.
Oh, no.
Okay, poor Kathy. So real quick, what I'm hearing then, David, is that at this point, there is no action needed from the EAC
Correct.
to move this forward?
Correct.
Very good. Bill, I heard a suggestion from you that there might be a need for someone to educate the incoming or the still relatively new players of the administration.
Yeah, and there was a group of us together working on this whole project for months and months, and then when Mr. Johnson left, I think that might have been, less of a priority, but it's going to come back again because it was to the point where the city was getting strong-armed pretty good to do something to fix it.
Very good. And what role do you see for EAC in that conversation, Bill?
I see it as oversight just to make sure that we know what's going to happen and that we've asked all the kind of questions that have come up. And every one of your questions, I can tell you, I know has been vetted pretty well to the point where the powers to be have basically said it's time to take the lake level down.
Very good. Then what I would propose as chair is, and I'm looking at Bill Murray, when we get a request from you to let's have a meeting like that, what the EAC is then positioned to do is put together a quick subcommittee to help and support you with that. Is that fair?
Yeah, I'll call Fred Ettinger and make sure that I'll be the point man to come back to you guys and let you know what's going on with it.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Bill.
David's got the legal side, so we'll both have an idea what's going on here.
All right. And so shifting gears back to invasive plants, poor Kathy got bumped off again. I'm guessing that great big dog ate her internet. Any comments based on what we heard thus far? Because we've had clear direction from Andrew, what he thinks about the invasive species stuff. Has anyone else kind of reached a conclusion that they want to share at this point? Or do we need to revisit this when Kathy returns?
I have one comment on that. And I think Kathy's comment last meeting about being at the high level of invasive species rather than, say, Norway maples and things that a lot of people have in their yards, like the kudzu level of invasive species, that is where our focus is and not the lower level. And when I mentioned invasive species in the lake, I meant fish species.
Thank you. Very good. So in Kathy's absence, and I'll follow up with her afterward, I just want to point out that invasive weeds now, invasive plants, noxious weeds, have been on at least the last 3 agendas. They're not anywhere in our strategic plan, or our list of strategic priorities. So I just want to kind of point out we've spent an awful lot of time on something that was not originally in our priority list, which is fine. These things kind of pop up. I just want to make sure as a group, we at EAC are doing that intentionally and not just falling into old patterns of behavior. Thoughts before I move us to the next agenda item?
Scott, I'll just speak for Kathy a little bit here, not to put words in her mouth, but she mentioned the Department of Agriculture, and at Lake Leone, we work very closely with the Department of Agriculture up there. And in particular, last year, we did a major project with them regarding exactly what you're talking about here. So it might behoove the city, if they're not already working closely with the Department of Agriculture, they should, because there's money. I know they spent a lot of money up there, no cost to us, to come in and attack certain areas where we were getting overtaken, and they did a heck of a job to clean it out. There is a big difference when they come in and eradicate, as I call it. They do a good job.
Very cool. Thank you, Bill.
Yep.
So then looking at our agenda for the day, and knowing that we're going to lose David Bean in just 10 minutes. David, I'm going to actually push Kevin Lugo to kind of share 2 items. So Kevin, are you ready? Perfect. Can you give us just the 1-minute update on the climate action plan and where you are with the climate action plan, and say the 2 or 3 minute update on the waste collection? And we'll then figure out how to best make use of David's limited time.
All right, the climate action plan, unfortunately, you know, between COVID and some of the other issues we have going on right now, is getting a little delayed. So we are working on a draft. We are making pretty good progress. Our next steps will be to give that draft back to the stakeholder group that we engaged with earlier, get their feedback, incorporate that, and then prepare a draft for the administration for City Council to review. So originally we wanted to have everything presented to Council by the end of July. Realistically, you know, that's becoming a very tight timeline, so it may have to get pushed a little bit back into the summer.
Very good. Thank you, Kevin.
In terms of the waste, Council discussed it briefly last night. There's going to be a meeting, correct me if I'm wrong, Lucine or Marsha, there's a meeting on Monday for an hour to talk about that in more detail.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, so the goal for me is for Council to make a decision on how they want to handle this by the July 13th regular meeting. That way we have sufficient time to prepare the RFP. And we are going to be talking, I think, Lucine, Jeff, the managing director, and myself, perhaps others, about how we can do more outreach. So we'll be talking about that hopefully later this week.
Very good. Thank you for the quick update, Kevin. So while we have David here, question to Lucine and Marsha. Marsha, I saw your hand, so you get to answer the question first. A question to the members of Council and the administration. What input do you need from EAC on this issue?
And I think
And
that was
Marsha, your
exactly
hand was
what
up
I was going to
first.
say, and Lucine can then. We are hearing from a large number of constituents, and it's really great that people are staying engaged. Kevin has kept a really good spreadsheet of what their issues are. And of course, we've heard from a large number of individuals who want to keep their private hauler, who don't understand the need to change the system. And they're looking at it from their individual point of view. We don't have that much feedback, except I think maybe, and Kevin, you can correct me on this, a letter from Berks Nature. I don't know that we've had very much feedback on the environmental potential for what's being proposed. So I see the information being skewed, and I understand why that is, but I just wanted to put that out to this group.
Very good. Thank you, Marsha. So that was a beautiful statement. My question is, what's the request?
You're the public.
My request, and can I share my screen here? Is that allowed?
Yes.
My request is that you help us share our website. So we put up information. We have the study from Keep Pennsylvania Beautiful that talked about the $2 million we spend every year in abatement. We've got a bunch of information here about why we're doing this. And then this is being updated kind of regularly as we go. But we have the Q&A that we've received so far from written to Council or during the public meetings. We've got the technical memos that we're using to make some of these decisions, as well as some other information here. And we actually do have a kind of a one-pager flyer that I'm hoping we'll get up on the website soon. So the easiest way to find this information is just to go to readingpa.gov/clean city, which is kind of the landing page for everything to do with waste and recycling. And there's a big thing at the top that says, learn about the Citywide Waste Initiative. So one major thing from my perspective is to have EAC help us get the information out there to make sure people are seeing it.
Thank you. And Lucine, I thought I saw a finger waggle, which suggested you had a specific request.
My request would be one for any member of the EAC to participate in upcoming town halls that Marsha and Kevin mentioned earlier. We're in the planning stages of that. So I would invite you to not only share that information once it's available to engage your stakeholders that you have access to, but also to participate as individuals. As the Environmental Advisory Committee, I agree with Marsha that, I'd like to call on you to provide a letter, overviewing your opinion on, a comprehensive trash program, the Mayor's Clean City Initiative, which is being overlooked. So from your perspective and your levels of expertise as the environmental impact, how trash is affecting the city of Reading. I think that's important because what we're only seeing is what Marsha said, most people at this point have made this an issue about private haulers. And what I've tried to do in working with the administration and speaking with the mayor is understand that this is a comprehensive plan that he is trying to put forward to council to mitigate trash for the city. The littering that we're seeing, the illegal dumping that we're seeing. And so, for you to mention any of those things and the adverse effects that it can have on our community, possibly even entertain some education, outreach, stewardship, I think would be very effective because we are really only seeing one group vocalize on this matter, and it's a very small component of what I believe the mayor's trying to put forward.
Thank you, Lucine. So we're going to lose David in 3 minutes.
You're going to lose David in about a minute. So what I will simply add to Lucine's comment is, to the extent you're looking for a letter from the EAC, I'm willing to be one of the letter writers who could help with that initiative. So as you continue to have this dialogue after I jump off, Scott, double back.
I volunteer as well. So quick motion that we actually write a letter in support.
I'll make the motion.
Any seconds?
I can just point out,
We're going to lose him.
EAC already wrote a letter under the previous administration.
Yep, we've got a copy. Thank you. Any additional conversation?
Need a second.
I know, sorry, I need a second.
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 All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? David, I'll help you write the letter. I'll contact you afterwards.
Yeah, I'm leaving. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. I apologize. I know that was a little bit rushed, but I wanted to make sure we had quorum so we could actually get an official letter in front of people. So going back to our agenda, I guess any comment about any additional things that need to be in that letter? David and I will write it. We'll circulate it to EAC for additional comments. Kevin?
Just what is your timeline? Again, July 13th, I would like to see a council action on this. So the time is relatively short.
Very good. That was going to be my question. So are there any other meetings ahead of that July 13th date, Marsha or Lucine, that we need to be aware of?
That's our next meeting.
Okay.
Our next formal meeting where we would be presenting public input. Except
Perfect.
as Lucine referred to, we will be having the Zoom town halls, whatever you might call it. So there will be that occasion too to be able to give input. If rather than just individual members attending, someone could read the letter on record from the EAC.
That would be wonderful. Lucine, can we lean on you to get us those dates? All right, thank you. All right, so we're approaching the top of the hour. We've got 32 minutes left. One of the agenda items was the single-use plastic ban. I know there's been quite a bit of email traffic around the single-use plastic ban. As an observation, I have not yet seen anybody kind of in favor of the single-use plastic ban for a variety of reasons that have been circulating in the emails. So I guess the quick question, is there anyone on the call that wants to speak to the issue and to argue that there's a need for EAC to take action. All right. So there's no need to point out it wasn't on our list of strategic priorities. No one seems to be all hot and heavy to talk about it. I think there's been a lot of email traffic. So if you guys are okay, we're going to move to the next topic.
Scott, I just wanted to let you know I'm on my phone.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kathy.
You know, I lost both the Zoom and again, I got kicked out of Zoom and then my Wi-Fi also kicked out. So I don't know.
It's all good,
Sorry.
Kathy. We assume the dog ate the internet, so all is good.
That's probably it.
We did, just so you know, we had a quick vote that we will be writing, EAC will be writing a letter on behalf of or supporting the single hauler issue with the trash.
Okay.
David Bean and I will take point and we'll circulate it ahead of time. We also will be kind of speaking on some of the Zoom meetings that Lucine's organizing.
Great.
So moving on then, just to kind of cover some of the old business. Anne, top of the list is the mapping proposal and funding. You have an update on that?
Next time.
Okay. Then there's the Lead Abatement Coalition, which was a David Bean thing, which we did not touch on. Does anyone else have an update on the lead abatement piece?
That was Bill's.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bill Murray. I apologize, Bill.
The mayor and I had a very brief conversation, and I think in the next couple of weeks, we'll be getting together to go over that.
Very good. What role is there for EAC? What do you need from us to support you?
I don't think there's anything right now. I can envision once the program gets started, you're going to have a lot of involvement. But right now, it's just a matter of trying to get a program started and bringing the EPA connections that we've made here that are going to basically fund this program to the mayor's office so that it can get started.
Okay, very good, Bill. And I know you already know this, but David Bean and Kathy Myers both have quite a bit of expertise having dealt with these issues. So make sure you recognize the EAC as a potentially valuable resource.
Yeah, Kathy was involved in our meeting with Senator Schwenk and the 50 people that we had here. So
excellent.
Yeah, and we volunteered to participate in the group they're trying to put together to work more on it. So, and I'm still available for that.
Yep.
Thank you, Kathy.
We'll be in touch for sure, Kathy.
Same here.
Yep.
Shelley, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, Bill, the Board of Health has also asked if there's anything, they were invited to that initial meeting. Would they have any involvement in this once it gets going?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
Big time.
and I'll continue to keep them updated as well.
Okay.
Very cool. Thank you. Then I'm going to move us on to new business. And first item of business is the transition back to in-person meetings. We know, for example, that Andrew is not a Zoom person and is not comfortable participating in Zoom. The bigger question from a human health and safety perspective is, at what point is EAC comfortable meeting face-to-face again? So, you know, we're a group. We got to do these things together. We're all volunteers. So I'm open to any thoughts or comments about when it's appropriate for EAC to meet face-to-face again.
Well, I had a thought, maybe if we had an outdoor meeting in one of the parks.
Okay.
I'll make a comment about it, Scott. So I've been following City Council pretty closely, and I believe that their slow measured course is a very good way to go. And just because, straight up, in the very beginning, we were all misled about wearing a mask and told not to wear it. And we can go down the list of everything that we now know that we didn't know, or didn't we know it, or did we know it, and were we all duped, so that, you know, there's a million of that. Let's not do that. But what I've learned here is, in handling RAWA, is a very slow measured approach is very worth the time invested to do it. There's no reason when the governor says, I can go green and I can open my front door up, there's no reason for me to expose my employees to that when we're not there yet. I mean, just because it's Friday the 26th, all of a sudden the problems went away. I'm not ready.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bill.
And
Bill Vitale, I saw your eyebrows raised in a way that suggests you had a comment.
Like everybody, I've become a student of coronavirus the last 3 months.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, we started social distancing before the governor issued the mandate. And I think I'm talking about my wife and myself, we're gonna continue to do it even after the way I see it is Wolf has been forced into it. I don't know if you saw in the paper today that Berks County's numbers were up today. The highest number in a week. I think Ann's idea is a good one. I mean, everything I've learned is been learning in the last couple of weeks is that outdoors with masks, the risk is very low. It's going to be a while before I would come to an indoor meeting. How long? I don't know.
Okay.
Andrew's going to have to figure out something. I mean, this is 2020. The new reality is this. So I'm sorry that it affects his ability to attend meetings, but I think with your capable facilitation, we're getting through agendas. We're doing business. This is working for me. So that's my
Thanks,
comment.
Bill. Kathy, I heard you speaking up.
Yes. So Kathy says what Bill said.
I love that succinctness. Very well done, Kathy. Very cool. So is there anyone other than Andrew strongly encouraging face-to-face meetings for EAC?
Marsha had her hand up.
Just really quickly, with face-to-face meetings, wearing masks, if any of you have had the reality of trying to conduct any kind of business with a mask on for any length of time to be able to communicate from a social distance, it just doesn't happen. So we lose our momentum in our discussions because the masks aren't meant for communication.
Very good. Thank you, Marsha. So I'm not hearing anyone speaking in favor of face-to-face meetings too soon. So I'm going to just kind of assume we have made a decision. We're going to continue to Zoom until everyone feels safe meeting face-to-face again. So moving on to the next agenda item, and Kathy, I'm kind of giving you a quick glance that you can't see. One of the new items of business is to plan a meeting with the mayor and the managing director to talk about the role of EAC, to share some of the priorities that EAC has identified. So the question is, what are the proper protocols for us to set up that kind of meeting? And which of the EAC members need to be participating or want to participate? So protocols and participation. Kathy, any insights since you've done this before?
I would hand off to Shelley. We just made an appointment with the mayor through the manager, and I think I attended alone, but that may have been the mayor's preference. I would think not a bunch of us, and maybe the chair for sure, but not, if anybody else is desperate, fine, but I think it would be good to, or maybe a chair and a past chair, I don't know, but not more than 2 or 3 people at the most, I would recommend. I thought it was helpful to have such a meeting. Shelley helped set it up, so her 2 cents are probably very worth it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kathy. So Shelley, I heard that bounced to you, and I saw Bill's hand up, and Lucine, we cannot even see the top of Orion's head, so you got to move him up so we can see him. So Shelley, Bill, then Orion. There he is. Shelley?
No, I was just going to say that I am glad to help, and we'll set it up by Zoom. We're still not open to the public here, so we're all working safely.
Wonderful. Bill?
I think the delegation, such as it is, should include at least one city resident, maybe more. I think that matters.
That's fair.
Yes,
And Bill, was
Good
that
point.
a volunteer? Because you are a city resident?
I'd be glad to be part of it. Social distancing.
And Kathy, you are both a city resident and a former chair.
I'd be happy to participate if that's helpful.
Okay. Anne, you and I are both in the same boat well, I guess I get to be the chair right now, but you and I are both technically outside the city and are in other ways because of where we're, okay. So
Yeah.
my proposal then, and I'm gonna direct this to Shelley and anyone jump in to clarify. Shelley, what I would propose is that you have a quick conversation with the mayor and the managing director. Ask the question, you know, how comfortable are they meeting with 3 of us via Zoom? And if they prefer a smaller group, we'll deal with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I would add, I do know Pedro pretty well from a past life, so he will know who I am and be happy to meet with me.
Oh, do tell. Do tell.
that's intriguing. If we had time, Kathy, we would dig into that statement, but we'll pass. Yeah, exactly. Bill's covering his ears.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that as far as getting through the manager, that may be helpful to have my name in there.
That sounds very cool. Thank you. So Shelley, is that enough direction for you to kind of get, you know, one test for their willingness to have a meeting?
Yes.
Do you need dates from us at this point? We
At
can
this
do that
point-
via email?
At this point, no, I'll have to get their availability first and then see how we can coordinate.
Okay, very good. So thank you for making sure that was on the agenda. EAC is interested in having the meeting. So thank you. Next
just add a
one
quick-
on, oh, go for it, Bill.
Well, just a quick comment. I mean, in past administrations, the mayor's assistant has been an important player in some of these processes. I don't know. I mean, Frank, I think, is just coming on board yesterday,
Right.
full time. So I don't know. I mean, I'd leave that to Shelley. She probably has a better feel for the inner workings of City Hall, but whether he participates in that, I am communicating it with him kind of independently relative to the climate action plan, just as because we've got a long-term relationship. But that's
Thank you, Bill.
It may be that he could be part of it. Anyway, that's it.
Excellent point. Thank you, Bill. Shelley, are you okay with that?
Yes.
Got it.
Hey guys,
Kevin?
sorry to butt in, but I do need to get going. Is there anything else you need from me?
Kevin, I had
Uh,
one question.
So
I had one
we'll
question, Kevin.
go for it, Bill.
Kevin, has there been any research or study on what the expected, and this was for a personal thought that I had, was the effect of recycling when you move those 20% into the whole group? Will the recycling increase from that 20%?
They're already recycling.
I know, but the thinking of those folks that want to hold on to their private haulers, and I used to be one of them. I understand they're different than the people who are in the stream, the bulk of the people there with the municipal collection. I think there's probably more recyclables going into that trash than there is in the municipal trash collection system, is what I'm saying.
Sure, yeah. I mean, part of the whole thing is improving our collection program. And one of the things that we're going to be doing is working on a suite program to have more curbside feedback, preferably educational. Of course, if there's no response, then maybe there's going to be enforcement. But that will work better when we have everybody on one service. And that's one impact for recycling.
Okay, I just wanted to hear that from you because I saw your research and it's good.
Thank you.
Very cool. Kevin, the only other item here on the agenda, is there any update about the rescheduled Earth Day event for September 27th? Any change there?
Yes, it's April 25th next year. We've decided, well, I shouldn't say we, the committee decided to push it back to April for a couple of reasons. You know, they're having the bandshell concert series, but that is one where you can sit in your own groups, and that's a little bit different than ours. We were really meant to interact with people. So we are worried that people won't show up, that vendors will be worried either that they won't have enough customers or they won't want to show. So the committee decided to push it until 2021. And all the like sponsorships and everything, I'm not really directly involved with reaching out, but we'll be reaching out to everybody and letting them know that, hey, you're on the schedule for next year already.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Kevin.
Yep.
Anyone else have anything for Kevin before he goes? All right, and Lucine sent a message in the group chat. She waved goodbye to everybody in case you missed that. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, Kev.
Quick question under new business is around the possible need for a July meeting. We did miss one of the EAC meetings, I think, immediately after COVID hit. So we're kind of technically a meeting short for this year. Historically, we skipped that July meeting because so many people are on vacation and such, but that seems less of an issue this year. How much?
Yeah, I think we should go. I think we should go ahead and meet in July. I would like to do that. I think there's quite a bit going on that.
I see thumbs up from Ann Sellers and Bill Murray and Bill Vitale.
Okay,
I've got a thumbs up too. So, all right, we've got a July meeting, which would be.
So I have a question then. Generally, we skip July and then August meetings a different day of the month. So do you want to have the July on what would be the 4th Tuesday and then August also on the 4th Tuesday and switch the August one back to the normal date? Does that work for everybody? Thumbs up?
Yep.
Thumbs up. Okay. That's what I'll do then, because we'll have to re-advertise, but I'll take care of that.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Shelley. So very cool. And I have an item for new business that I guess goes here, right, Shelley? And make sure I get my Robert's rules right.
Yes.
All right. Item of new business, and we don't have to make decisions today. This is really a question topic, which is given what's going on in our community around Black Lives Matter and the need and importance of diversity on all boards and commissions and things of that nature. I want to point out we're a bunch of white people on this call, which means by definition, we are not necessarily representative of the entire city. So my question is a historic one and a procedural one. So the historic one, I guess the procedural one is, what's the official process for bringing new people onto the EAC that we need to be aware of? And then the second is, what can we as EAC members do to address this issue? I'm not sure I articulated that particularly well, but I see Bill Vitale ready to talk. So Bill, save me from my rambles.
Well, I mean, I think the first caution, and I'm sure Marsha is going to back me up, is you don't want this to be a token kind of step.
All right.
I mean, you know, it's counterproductive, number one, and it has to be someone who, two things. Genuinely, we're trying to reflect the community. So we're kind of weak in city residents, number one, but we're trying to reflect the community. But you also, so you want someone who actually reflects the community, and just because you have someone who's Latino doesn't necessarily mean they reflect the community any more than having an Italian American reflects the community. And secondly, someone who brings a particular understanding and expertise. I'm sure Marsha could pick up on that and say a lot more. But and it goes without saying. I mean, I think Scott. I woke up this morning thinking about that, wondering how do we address it. I mean, thinking about today's meeting and really thinking about it for the first time that we're an all-white body.
Very cool. And again, I don't think we have to solve the issue at this point. I just kind of want to at least begin the conversation. So Kathy Myers, I can't tell if you were trying to jump in or not, but I saw Kathy blink, and then it looks like Marsha has a point. So Kathy, then Marsha.
I wasn't, so I don't know what I did, but I will just say I think it's important to consider The way we get members is we look for people who might be capable and willing and ask them to apply when we have a vacancy. Shelley would know whether we can change the number of members without a change to the ordinance. But at any rate, there are ways we could add members, I'm sure, if we really wanted to. And I don't know, do we have one vacancy right now?
Shelley?
I don't believe we do. I would have to verify that.
Yeah,
Okay.
technically, the way I read it, Shelley and Kathy, we're full, but we have some people like David Bean whose term has long since expired.
But he has just sent his application in for officially being reappointed. So
Yay, celebratory hands. Okay, good. Thank you. All right, Marsha, I saw you had some thoughts.
Yeah, and it goes back to a bigger picture of how people are coming on our boards, authorities, and commissions. It's been the tradition, and I've had an issue with it, is it almost appears like the first come, first serve. So we don't look necessarily at the diversity as being a criteria as much as we look at the person is willing to serve. So I think for the overall process, we need to revamp. To Bill's point, we need to have people that are interested and invested. Just because a person's a person of color doesn't mean that they're going to be invested in what each board, authority, and commission is looking at. However, I believe it's also important looking at the Latino population of the city. We want to make sure that we are able to grow and groom people for being invested in environment, and people from the city being invested in it, because some of the issues we're going to be facing moving forward, we need to have those folks be advocates. So I know it doesn't answer the question, but I think some more outreach to some of the folks that we know, leaders in the community, people that may be able to come forward with some names beyond the usual suspects, because that's the other thing we tend to do. We tend to recycle the same people over and over again.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we're tired of recycling.
Yeah, I mean, even though I love David dearly, so I won't, yeah, I got that.
No, Marsha, thank you very much.
Slow. I'm sorry.
I do have one comment on that, and you know, we look for people with environmental expertise, which is wonderful. But what about people that have really great community outreach arms?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking in particular about this woman that's on the 18th Wonder Advisory Council. I can't remember her name, but you know her, Scott. Yeah,
Tanya.
someone like her that has a great outreach into the community and doesn't necessarily have environmental background, but can reach the community.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Bill Murray, I couldn't tell if you were anxious to talk or if you were gotten distracted by all the other stuff on your desk.
No, I'm really glad that Marsha said what she said, because I don't know that I could have said what she said. Is that I'm firmly against affirmative action to balance out any government agency, unless it's absolutely in your face, that, you know what I mean? If it's absolutely something being stuck in your face, other than that, go get the best darn people. I don't care if all of us have to go and we're all Hispanic or black or whatever. It doesn't matter to me. I just, those that know me know I don't see that. I just don't see it, and I don't like it stuck down my throat. And I appreciate the concern. I really genuinely understand it, and I side with like what Bill brought up. I think about things like that too, and when I do, I move over to Marsha's side, what Marsha said, and go, I'm not interested in being part of that, you know.
Very cool. So, and again, my thoughts were just kind of my fear. I agree with the need for expertise or skills, you know, communication skills, reaching, all those things are really, really important. My fear is just, I don't want to limit the pool of experts to people I already know well. And I will confess, I don't know very many people of color in the environmental community. So I just want to make sure that my lack of big circles is not preventing access to some additional expertise.
And we can't forget the people that can reach into the community, like unlike us, that like I don't even live in Reading, and my business is there, but I don't live there, and so people that have access to neighbors in the community and can represent them.
Very cool. So I'm keeping an eye on the agenda. I just
I
wanted
would just say that that's not all of us. Certainly, I live in this community. I have Latino friends and neighbors. I work with Albright College. So yeah, we do have some ability to do that. But I agree, it's an important aspect, and we need to try and find more people with different networks.
Very cool. And I don't think we need to make.
I'm a resident too. Just so you know. Okay,
That's cool.
I am a resident of the city of Reading.
Scott, can I bring up one real quick point before the end of the meeting about something I want to add to the next meeting?
Okay.
Yeah, so I was sitting on a Schuylkill Action Network meeting. There were about 36 people on the call. And we had a couple excellent presentations from a professor from Villanova University and study of rain gardens, and someone that I've never heard of this before, but did studies. He's a university professor that did studies on biochar, and he's been doing them for almost 10 years. And biochar is the remnants from a piece of old wood. And so he did some really great research, and it's a good thing to maybe install in the Victory Gardens as an infiltration measure and nutrient measure. And you can sequester 3 pounds of CO2 for 1 pound of charcoal in the base. And it stays there as an infiltration, and it actually adds nutrients to the plants. So I'd like to have a little discussion on that, because I'd never heard of it before, and no one on the call had heard of it before. And it's just fantastic. It's good for green roofs, everything. And then I'd also like to discuss PBOS, because there needs to be some type of educational outreach about it, which is polyfluorocarbons that are in Teflon and things of that nature. There was just a spill in my local lake where we get our water from. And we get it from wells near there. And this does not biodegrade. This does not have a half-life. And we had a huge fish and turtle kill because of it. And it was just a mistake by the fire company practicing spreading their foam in the lake. So
We'll get that.
Just lack of education, and we need to have a discussion about that in education.
All right, so I saw Bill Murray had some reaction there. So why don't we just go ahead and put that on the agenda for next time, and that way we can have a more fully thought out conversation around it. So I am keeping an eye on this agenda and the time. We've got 3 minutes. Bill?
Well, how are we going to leave what you raised? Where are we leaving that?
Yep, so that's where I was going to head. So what I would suggest is that it's another agenda item for the next meeting. And I'm not sure what decisions, if any, EAC needs to be making on this. I just wanted to kind of plant the seed, because I know it's a conversation with some of the boards and councils in the area.
Kathy said she knows some folks. I'm thinking of some young people, either possibilities of people they may know. Is it premature for us to even have a conversation? Can we wait till next month?
Yeah.
Okay.
And can I just say
hang on, Bill, if you know people, keep talking to them. Find out what those perspectives are. There's no need to wait until we have a conversation, because that can inform the conversation of the next meeting. Shelley?
Just to remind you all, even if there are no vacancies on the board officially, you have subcommittees where you can try to channel people in to get them involved that way, so that when you do have a vacancy, you already have a stream of people who are interested in the work.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so with the 2 minutes left, I'm gonna make a request. We still have the updates as needed list. A lot of these are things that are kind of routinely talked about in our meetings. What I would suggest is if anybody has any updates about any of those things, that needs to be discussed rather than just shared via email, this is the chance to do it. So is there anything on that list of updates as needed that absolutely needs to be discussed at this meeting? So then the request is if anybody has an update for anything in that section 8, that you just shoot us a quick email, and we'll make sure at some point moving forward, we'll just have kind of a running list so people can update this stuff ahead of the meeting. All right. Any other matters before we accept a motion to adjourn?
Hey, Scott, I'll just mention something to the group here. So the Berks County Water and Sewer Association, I was this year's conference chairman, and because of COVID, we were going to cancel it. And I said, we don't cancel things, we'll do them differently. So we have put together a very intense Zoom conference with a lot of sessions. We're actually going to be getting DP credits, legal credits. It grew from just like, let's do something into this massive thing. What I'm going to do is, as the conference chair, is I will get the committee to approve. I'll get a list from Shelley, and it's free for our members. And I will make sure that everyone here can participate as well for free.
Hey, thank you, Bill.
And there's a lot of good stuff on it. It really is.
Can I follow up with you afterwards? I'd love to learn more.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I'll give you a call.
Okay.
Okay, Scott, just a 15-second rounding back since I got partway through my item and disappeared. So I think there's just very little that needs to be done to comply with the law, but we do have issues as Lester described and I've described before, which is that we have people using our woods and preserved areas as yard waste dumps and garden waste dumps. And it's really quite bad, and it's been going on for years. And as a result, we have vastly changed the habitat and the health of the forest. And I have lots and lots of pictures to document that, and I would like to have a discussion about those issues. Because those are what, they're related, they're not exactly what we have to do for that law.
Thank you, Kathy. How connected is that to the single hauler program?
It's not.
Okay, all right. I didn't know where yard waste fit in for the city.
The city collects it if you put it out properly once a week or if you call.
So
there's
Kathy,
no need.
It would be to address possibly composting yard waste somewhere?
It could.
Okay.
It could, but my issue is I walk through the woods down the trails and there are 5 feet high piles of everybody's yard waste from Oak Drive, for example, because they're too lazy to put it in a bag or tie it up, and they just go and dump it in the woods. And there's acres and acres of seriously impacted forest as a result. And it upsets me more than seeing a TV dumped in, that we're all so worried about, a TV dumped in a vacant lot in the city. I don't think is as big as a hazard or as big as an environmental problem as what's going on by some of our most prosperous people in the community are helping with it.
Can you lead that conversation at our next meeting?
Yes.
Thank you. So Shelley,
and that's what I wanted to get to.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Shelley, make sure that gets added to the agenda. Shelley, I saw you had your hand up too before we closed. Upton, you're on mute, Shelley.
Sorry about that. We had sirens going through here again. The city yard waste program is a once a week, but yes, you do have to either call ahead or make sure you have it set out properly on your collection day. A lot of people don't know that we offer that, and other people don't want to commit to doing it the proper way.
Very cool.
Right, yeah. And so education and outreach, as always, is an important part of this, and we should discuss that too. Thanks, Shelley.
All right, at the next meeting. Bill, is this a next meeting item or is this a today meeting
I
item?
guess it could be. You know, Lester mentioned something about, I think he mentioned something about, and this sort of relates, you know, urban forests. And in a follow-up conversation, and maybe I think this came up in our clean action, climate action plan meetings, Larry Lloyd from Berks Nature, and then Sarah brought up there are urban forest programs, there's grant money, there's all kinds of stuff. Maybe in the context of what Kathy was talking about, maybe a couple of minutes to have a little broader discussion, if that's something, not that we would necessarily take up, but maybe put it on somebody's radar. There are funds available, and we have a lot of forest area in the city.
Well, and I see Shelley adding that to the agenda for the next meeting.
I don't know a lot about it.
Just real quick, Bill, do you want to have something to add about PVOS at the next meeting?
PVOS. You mean?
I think she's talking to Bill Murray.
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, between now and then, and me and you should talk, and maybe if we're lucky, we can locate like a 15-minute introduction by a professional to them, so that because I am not a scientist, and you start saying those, I'm with you, PFAS, PFAS, that's it. I don't know, for me to say the word of what it is, I can't do that. That's not, but it's definitely something that's big, and that all the folks in the EAC should be aware of, at least at a 5,000 square foot levels, because it is going to become more and more prevalent in environmental discussions.
Wonderful. So it sounds like you guys will be helping Shelley build out that piece of the agenda.
Yep.
I love it. Thank you.
PFAS.
All right. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Good job, Scott. Second.
Any discussion?
Aye.
All right. Motion passed. Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very good.
See you, Shelley.
We'll talk to you guys in
Thank you,
July, if
Scott.
not before.
Yep.
Bill Murray, I'm going to call you. There were a couple of interesting things I just want to follow up
Yep.
with.
Yeah, give me a call. You got my cell phone number?
I do not. You want to shoot